the Cedar Peak scandal, the 8-year-old heiress, her aging professor, and the forbidden love that exposed a town's darkest tragedy. In the idyllic city of Cedar Peak, a place where lush pine forests are perpetually shrouded in mist, stood a prestigious, old university known as a bastion for the children of the elite. Among the thousands of new freshmen, Isabel was a name that could not be ignored. At just 18, she possessed a refined, aristocratic beauty, befitting an heiress born into the lap of luxury. Her family was a powerful and well-known name in the real estate world. Yet, behind that glamorous and haughty exterior was an empty soul, a profound loneliness that no one could comprehend. Her parents were consumed year-round by billion-dollar contracts, leaving their only daughter behind in a mansion that was opulent but cold. Her peers were either consumed by jealousy or only approached her for their own gain. Because of this, Isabel had grown quiet, withdrawing into a world of her own. On her first day of classes, Isabel immediately became the center of attention. Whispers and curious stares followed her everywhere. Amidst the noisy crowd, only one pair of eyes looked at her with an unusual calmness, free of judgment or overt curiosity. They belonged to Professor Alistair Finch, a lecturer in the literature department. A man now in his 60s, Professor Finch was revered throughout the university for his profound knowledge and dedication to his profession. His wife had passed away many years ago, and his children were grown, having started their own careers far away. Everyone considered his life to be full and complete. But deep within his eyes, one could still see a persistent, deep-seated loneliness. The moment Professor Finch saw Isabel, he felt a flicker of surprise, not because of her beauty, but because in her large, clear eyes, he saw a profound sadness, a sense of being lost that was identical to how he himself had felt many years ago. The first lecture began. Professor Finch's voice was deep and warm, echoing through the lecture hall. Every word he spoke was like a cool, refreshing stream, slowly watering Isabel's parched soul. She found herself looking up. For the first time in years, she felt she was being truly listened to. Throughout the class, Professor Finch's gaze often drifted toward the young woman sitting at the back of the room. He noticed she wasn't taking many notes, just staring quietly out the window, her spirit seemingly adrift in a place far, far away. After class, as the students flooded out of the lecture hall, Professor Finch walked down the aisle and stopped beside Isabel's desk. "You're Isabel, correct? I've noticed you're rather quiet. Is there anything troubling you? Anything you need to talk about?" His unexpected question stunned her. For the first time, someone wasn't asking about her family's status or prying into her luxurious life, but was simply concerned about her feelings. Her heart trembled slightly. She shook her head, forcing a smile. "Oh no, I'm fine, sir. I'm just still getting used to the new environment." He nodded, his eyes kind. "If anything comes up, don't hesitate to find me." In the days that followed, the image of Professor Finch lingered in Isabel's mind. She saw in the older man a calmness and a maturity she couldn't find in anyone else. She began looking for excuses just to be near him. One afternoon, as Isabel was eating lunch alone in a quiet corner of the campus quad, a few of her classmates deliberately walked past, their words dripping with sarcasm. "Look at the little heiress, having to eat her lunch all alone. How pathetic." Isabel lowered her head, tears welling in her eyes. Just then, a deep, warm voice came from behind them. "Instead of spending your time mocking your classmates, why don't you go to the library and read a book?" The girls jumped and turned to see Professor Finch standing there, his expression stern. They mumbled a greeting and scurried away. He walked over and sat on the stone bench opposite her, his voice softening. "Don't pay any mind to words like that. The only thing that matters is that you live true to yourself." For the first time in her life, someone had stood up for her, unconditionally. A warm feeling seeped into every corner of her heart, and she knew something very different had begun to sprout. After that day, Isabel began to change. She was no longer so withdrawn, but whenever she felt sad or lonely, the image of the old professor with his kind eyes and calm voice would surface in her mind. The feelings, no matter how much she tried to deny them, grew stronger each day. For Professor Finch, that incident also left an indelible mark. He told himself it was merely a teacher's responsibility to his student. But when he saw the tears streaming down Isabel's cheek, his heart had felt a sudden pang. The image of the lonely young woman in the vast quad haunted him, reminding him of the days when he, too, had faced a similar emptiness. That afternoon, the sky over Cedar Peak suddenly opened up. The first squall of the season arrived without warning, sending the bustling campus into chaos. Isabel had just finished her last class, and hadn't yet left the building when the rain became a downpour. She stood alone on the steps, watching the water cascade across the grounds. Her friends had all rushed home, leaving her stranded and lost. The wind whipped under the eaves, spattering cold raindrops onto the thin fabric of her white blouse. She shivered, clutching her backpack, a feeling of emptiness rising within her that mirrored her life, glamorous on the outside, but utterly lonely within. Just then, a familiar figure appeared. Professor Finch, holding an old black umbrella, was walking slowly toward her. "Why haven't you left? Didn't you bring an umbrella?" His voice was warm, tinged with concern. Isabel turned, her eyes glistening. She shook her head and gave a weak smile. "I forgot." Professor Finch said nothing more. He walked closer, opened the umbrella, and held it high enough to cover them both. "Come on, I'll walk you to the gate. You'll catch a cold standing here." The moment the umbrella opened, his form seemed like a sturdy shield, protecting her from the thick curtain of rain. Isabel's heart skipped a beat. She walked silently beside him, listening to the patter of the rain on the taut fabric. She could smell a unique scent from him, a scent of old books and laundry soap, simple, yet it made her feel a strange sense of peace. The walk from the lecture hall to the main gate was short, but today, to Isabel, it felt like a fairy tale journey. When they reached the gate, the rain hadn't let up. Professor Finch stopped. "Where do you live? Do you need me to call you a taxi?" Isabel quickly shook her head. "No, that's okay. I can get a ride-share." "Thank you, Professor." The car took her back to the cold, empty mansion. But her heart still felt as if it were being warmed from under his old, worn umbrella. For the first time in 18 years, she understood what sincere care and protection felt like. And from that moment on, that innocent but powerful feeling began to take deep root in her heart. After that rainy afternoon, the image of Professor Finch and his black umbrella haunted her. Every time she entered the lecture hall, her eyes would unconsciously search for his tall, thin, familiar figure. She told herself it was merely admiration, but with each passing day, her heart beat more erratically whenever he called her name, or when his gaze happened to sweep past her. Isabel began to find any reason she could to be near him. After every lecture, she would linger, using the pretense of asking about the material. "Professor, I'm still not quite clear on this passage. Could you possibly explain it again?" Professor Finch would patiently elaborate, his voice slow and deliberate. Isabel would pretend to listen intently, but in reality, her mind was simply mesmerized by his every gesture, every line on his face. The more she interacted with him, the more drawn she was to his calm, erudite nature. One afternoon, after carefully explaining a complex point, Professor Finch said gently, "I see you have a very good grasp of the material, Isabel. I think your only issue is a lack of confidence. College is a place to cultivate independence. Don't rely too much on your professors." Hearing this, Isabel's face flushed. She looked down and mumbled, "Yes, sir. But I find it's easier to understand when I hear you explain it directly." Professor Finch was taken aback. He didn't want to read too much into it, telling himself it was just a student's respect. And yet, he couldn't help but notice the sparkle in Isabel's eyes, a look that seemed to say much more than a simple thank you. After several of these sessions, Professor Finch began to realize something was different. This girl wasn't like his other students. She always seemed to find a reason to prolong their conversations. Every time she stood before him, with her clear eyes and gentle voice, he felt a strange warm breeze seeping into the heart he had kept locked away for so long. Many nights, Professor Finch lay awake, tossing and turning. He would scold himself. "You're over 60, nearly 3 times her age. You have to stop this now, before it goes too far." With that in mind, he tried to keep his distance. In class, he avoided looking in her direction. When the lecture ended, he would leave quickly. And yet, all his efforts seemed to be in vain. Though he tried to avoid her, Isabel still found ways to be near him. A polite, "Good morning, Professor," each day, a watchful gaze as he walked into the classroom. Once, in the library, she happened to sit down at the table directly across from him. She tilted her head slightly and smiled. "Do you often come here to read, Professor?" Professor Finch was flustered. He was about to get up and leave, but the bright, pure smile on the young woman's face made it impossible. That smile was like a ray of warm sunlight, piercing through the gloomy clouds that had shrouded his soul for so many years. Isabel's feelings became more and more apparent. She started bringing him small gifts, sometimes a box of pastries, other times a plate of fresh fruit. "I see you teaching all day, you must get tired. I brought you something to keep your strength up." At first, Professor Finch firmly refused, but faced with her earnest, pleading eyes, he eventually had to accept. He knew he was slowly weakening against her sincere, innocent attention. One afternoon, after class had ended, Isabel accidentally dropped her notebook. Professor Finch quickly bent down to help her pick it up. The moment his hand brushed against hers, a strange jolt shot through their bodies. They both froze, their eyes locking. He snatched his hand back, his heart pounding. Isabel's face turned crimson, and she looked down to hide a shy smile. From that moment on, they both understood. That invisible thread, connecting them, was pulling tighter. One weekend evening, Isabel lay in bed, her mind in a tangle. Mustering all her courage, she sent him a text message. "Professor? Are you busy? I need to talk to someone." A few minutes later, her phone screen lit up. "I'm free. You can talk to me." Just that simple reply was enough to make her heart feel lighter. She typed out the words, pouring out her feelings. "Do you ever feel lonely, Professor? I'm surrounded by people, but I always feel empty, like no one is really listening." On the other side of the city, Professor Finch read her words, and his heart tightened. He understood that feeling better than anyone. He slowly typed his reply. "I've felt that way before too, Isabel. Loneliness isn't about being surrounded by no one. It's about being surrounded by no one who truly understands you." Reading his message, Isabel burst into tears. This time, she wasn't crying out of self-pity, but out of a profound sense of relief, of feeling seen. She quickly replied, "I wish I had met you sooner." Alistair froze. He knew this young woman was offering him something far more than just respect. He sat in silence for a long time before putting his phone down. Isabel's messages had made his old heart stir again. For the first time in years, someone truly needed his presence, sought him out as an emotional anchor. As for Isabel, she hugged her phone to her chest that night, a constant smile on her face. She knew the age gap and the judgment of society were waiting for them. But right now, her heart held only one thing, this special connection with her professor. And those text messages had unwittingly opened a new door, a door through which neither of them could ever turn back. After their conversations over text, Professor Finch's presence became essential in Isabel's life. She no longer saw him as just a respected teacher, but as a soulmate, a sturdy emotional anchor. The desire to be closer, to share more, grew until she took a risk one weekend afternoon and sent him a message. "Professor? I was wondering if you might be free to get some coffee this weekend. There are a few things I'd like to talk to you about in person." Alistair stared at the screen for a long time. He knew this invitation was loaded with unspoken meaning. He knew that if he accepted, he would be officially crossing the boundary of a professor-student relationship. But the sincerity in Isabel's words made it impossible for him to refuse. He sent a short reply. "All right. You choose the place." The next day, Isabel chose a small cafe tucked away in a quiet alley in Cedar Peak. She arrived early, her heart pounding. When she saw Professor Finch's figure appear in the doorway, she shot to her feet, a radiant smile spreading across her face. He was dressed in a simple button-down shirt, looking dignified but also approachable. Their conversation began with academics, but gradually drifted toward life and personal feelings. Isabel told him about her childhood, which was starved of affection, and about the times she had to force a smile to hide her sense of alienation. Alistair just listened quietly, occasionally nodding or offering a gentle word of comfort. His words made her feel understood, soothed. After that first coffee, other meetings followed, sometimes at an old bookstore, other times in a deserted corner of a park. One day, the air was chilly, and seeing that Isabel was only wearing a thin blouse, Alistair didn't hesitate to unwind his own wool scarf and wrap it around her neck. "You girls are so careless with how you dress," he said, his tone stern but incredibly warm. Isabel looked up at him, her eyes shining, and whispered, "I'm not cold anymore, not while you're here." In that moment, Alistair froze. He knew the thin boundary between them had been completely erased. Their feelings for each other grew, no longer confined to stolen glances or innocent questions. It had become a bond between two lonely souls, one who was rediscovering warmth after years of cold, and one who was learning what it truly meant to be loved for the first time. Alistair began to notice his heart was no longer at peace. He suffered from insomnia, lying awake at night, replaying Isabel's smile, the look in her eyes. He knew this was wrong, but the more he tried to reason with himself, the deeper he fell into the emotional vortex. Meanwhile, Isabel grew stronger and more resolute. To her, the age difference and the judgment of society no longer mattered. One afternoon in the park, as the sunset painted the sky, Isabel turned, looked deep into his eyes, and said unexpectedly, "Professor, I know we're very different, but I don't want to hide this anymore. I have feelings for you. I want to be with you." Her words struck him like a thunderbolt. He was stunned, his heart pounding in his chest. Responsibility, morality, public opinion, 1,000 thoughts swirled in his mind. "Isabel, you're so young," he said, his voice heavy with sadness. "These feelings you have now, they might just be temporary. One day, you'll regret this." But Isabel shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No. All my life I've had to live according to other people's wishes. This is the first time I want to choose for myself, to love the way my own heart tells me to." Hearing her words, Professor Finch felt a lump form in his throat. He saw in the young woman before him a reflection of himself yearning for love but always constrained by the strict rules of society. He returned home that night with a heavy heart. He knew that if he continued down this path, he could lose everything. But if he let her go, perhaps neither he nor Isabel would ever find this feeling again. After that afternoon, their relationship crossed a thin, invisible line. They never officially said the words "I love you," but every glance, every text message, every meeting was enough to confirm that they belonged to each other. However, the story they thought was known only to them was gradually becoming less secret than they imagined. At the university, the whispers began. Students were perceptive. They started noticing the unusual signs. The way Isabel looked at Professor Finch was no longer mere admiration. The professor himself would sometimes pause mid-lecture, his gaze lingering for a moment on her desk. Once, a group of classmates happened to see her sitting in a quiet cafe, with Professor Finch across the table. That single image was enough to plant the seeds of suspicion. The rumors began to spread like a poisonous wind. Some maliciously claimed that Isabel was using the professor to get better grades, while others, driven by jealousy, made snide remarks. "Guess the rich girl has to stoop to dating an old professor." These comments eventually reached Isabel. They saddened her, but she wasn't afraid. Her greatest worry was for Professor Finch, and just as she feared, the storm began to gather around him. In the faculty lounge, a few colleagues made veiled inquiries, hinting at his special relationship with a female student. The pressure from all sides began to weigh heavily on the old professor's shoulders. To avoid gossip, they started to be more careful, moving their meetings to even more secluded places. One evening, Isabel texted him, "You're scared, aren't you? But I have no regrets. I'll accept anything, as long as I can be with you." Reading those words, Alistair's heart ached. He knew this young woman was braver than he was. Isabel had a close friend in her class named Chloe. One afternoon, Chloe was walking past the small cafe and froze when she saw Isabel sitting with Professor Finch, her face radiant, her eyes shining with happiness. That night, Chloe couldn't sleep. The next day, she pulled Isabel to a quiet corner of the campus. "Isabel, be honest with me," she said, her voice serious. "You have feelings for Professor Finch, don't you?" Isabel was stunned, but then she gave a small nod. Chloe grabbed her friend's hand, her own voice trembling. "Are you crazy? He's 60 years old. If people find out, it won't just be you, his career will be ruined." Tears streamed down Isabel's face, but her voice was unwavering. "I know all of that. But this is the first time in my life I've felt truly loved. You know how lonely I've been all these years. He's the only one who saw my weakness and protected me." Chloe was speechless. She pleaded with her friend. "They won't feel sorry for you, Isabel. They'll laugh at you, condemn you. Can you handle that?" Isabel looked her friend straight in the eye. "I don't care. As long as I have him, I can handle anything." Isabel's changes did not go unnoticed by her family. Her parents, Richard and Eleanor Davenport, though busy, always kept an eye on their precious daughter. They noticed she was coming home late more often, always smiling down at her phone. That evening, Eleanor could no longer hold back. "Who are you texting that's making you smile like that? You're only 18. Don't get involved in some romance and make your father and me worry." Isabel jumped, quickly hiding her phone. Her clumsy lie only made her mother more suspicious. She spoke to her husband, and they both agreed to keep a closer eye on their daughter. The couple's fragile love affair now faced a new pressure, a storm brewing from the very people Isabel loved most. Just as Professor Finch had feared, a few days later, Eleanor had the family's private driver secretly follow Isabel. The luxury car trailed her silently after class. When the driver saw her turn down a small alley and enter an old book cafe, Eleanor instructed him to go inside and check. A few moments later, the driver returned. He reported that she was sitting and talking with an older man who looked like a professor. A mother's intuition told Eleanor that something was deeply wrong. The feeling of unease in her heart grew stronger by the day. Meanwhile, at the university, the rumors that had been mere whispers erupted into a raging fire. One morning, a group of students in the class suddenly received candid photos of Isabel and Professor Finch sitting across from each other in the cafe. The pictures spread through group chats at lightning speed. Soon, the entire campus was buzzing. "Oh my God, so it's true! The rich heiress and the old professor, what a scandal! A 60-year-old professor dating an 18-year-old student? I can't believe it." The atmosphere in the classroom became suffocating. Every time Isabel walked in, she was swarmed by scrutinizing glances and stifled giggles. But Professor Finch faced a far more terrifying pressure. The university administration had summoned him for a formal explanation. The dean of the department spoke, his voice stern. "Professor Finch, we cannot ignore these rumors and photographs. Right or wrong, this situation has severely damaged the university's reputation." Alistair sat there, sweat beading on his forehead, his hands clenched tightly. He wanted to deny it, but the photos were irrefutable proof. He could only bow his head, his voice hoarse. "I admit that my relationship with Miss Maynard Davenport has been closer than is conventional. But I assure you, it was born from sincere feelings. I have never taken advantage of or coerced her in any way." His confession sent a murmur through the room. The dean slammed his hand on the table. "Sincere feelings? Do you have any idea that you are destroying a decades-long career and the honor of this institution?" A provost added. "We have no choice but to form a disciplinary committee. The lightest punishment will be a suspension of your teaching duties. The most severe will be forced termination." Hearing this, Alistair felt his world crumble. His entire life had been dedicated to his career, without a single scandal. Now, it was all on the verge of collapse. Leaving the meeting room, he dragged his heavy feet down the hall. The stares of curiosity, contempt, and pity cutting into him like knives. That afternoon, Isabel called him, her voice choked with tears. "Professor, I heard everything. They're saying so many things about you. I'm so sorry, this is all my fault." Alistair was silent for a long moment, then he forced down his own weakness to comfort her. "Isabel, don't blame yourself. This was my choice. I knew this path wouldn't be easy. As long as you don't give up, I can endure it." Her whispered "I love you" over the phone made his heart tremble. He knew this young woman was betting her entire future on this relationship. And could he, a man who had seen the world, find the courage to walk with her to the end? That night, Alistair sat alone in his dark study. He felt the true storm had finally hit, and their love had entered its most brutal phase, where all judgment and prejudice were aimed directly at them. After the rumors spread, Alistair endured the most difficult days of his life. He could feel the stares and whispers in the hallways. At night, he sat alone in his empty house, besieged by torment. He was no longer young enough to ignore the wagging tongues of the world. His life's work, his honor, the trust of generations of students, all of it could be destroyed by one wrong decision. Finally, he decided he had to end it, not because he didn't love her, but because he loved her too much. He had to protect Isabel from this tempest, to give her the bright future she deserved. One afternoon, he asked to meet her at their usual bookstore. The atmosphere was heavy, completely different from their other meetings. "Isabel," he began, his voice low and raspy. "We can't continue this. You have your whole future ahead of you. You can't throw it away for a fleeting, impulsive feeling." His words were like a knife to her heart. She froze, her eyes wide before tears began to stream down her face. No, don't say that. I don't need a future, I just need you. Alistair tried to remain firm, but his own heart was breaking. You're too young. You don't understand what we'll have to face. I can't be selfish and bring you misery. Isabel broke down sobbing, lunging forward to grab his hands. You think I don't know? I know everything. I know people will curse us. I know my parents will object. But I accept it all. Please don't leave me. I've spent my whole childhood in loneliness. If I lose you now, I won't be able to bear it. Her tears streamed down her young face, her small hands trembling as they clung to his. Seeing her like this, Alistair's heart shattered. All his reason, morality, and fear of public opinion became meaningless in the face of her tears and sincere love. His old hand trembled, squeezing hers in a gesture of surrender. Meanwhile, at home, Isabel's changes had not escaped her parents' notice. One evening, her father, Richard, asked sternly, "Isabel, are you seeing someone?" She flinched, stammering. Her mother, Eleanor, narrowed her eyes. "Stop lying, tell us the truth. Who are you involved with?" The silence stretched on, until finally, unable to bear it any longer, Isabel burst into tears. "Yes, I'm seeing someone. But please, don't try to stop us." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Who is it? You're only 18 and you dare to have a secret affair." Sobbing, Isabel gathered all her courage. It's Professor Finch. My lecturer." A deathly silence fell over the room. Eleanor's eyes went wide, and the color drained from Richard's face. After a moment, he roared, "What? A 60-year-old man? Do you have any idea what you've just said?" Eleanor shrieked. "You're insane, Isabel. He's old enough to be your father. How can we ever show our faces in public again? What do you two know?" Isabel screamed through her tears. "You've never truly cared about me. He's the only one who listens to me, who protects me. I love him. And I will never give him up." Her words were like salt in her father's wound. He shot to his feet. "Starting tomorrow, you are not going to school anymore. I will speak with the administration and have that old man fired." Hearing this, Isabel panicked. She grabbed her father's arm. "No, don't you dare! If you do that, I'll run away from home." Her defiance left both Richard and Eleanor stunned. They had never seen their quiet, obedient daughter become so fiercely resolute. After Isabel discovered the truth, events quickly spiraled out of control. Her father, Richard, immediately called the university administration, his voice filled with rage and power. A 60-year-old lecturer seducing an 18-year-old freshman. Where is the honor of your institution? Soon after, an emergency disciplinary hearing was convened. Professor Finch was summoned to attend. The atmosphere in the conference room was suffocatingly tense. The stern faces of the university's leadership board made him feel as if he were standing before a firing squad. The chancellor began, his voice heavy. "Professor Finch, the university has received a serious complaint from a student's parents. We require a direct explanation from you." The room was dead silent. Alistair's heart hammered against his ribs. He took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, "I admit that my relationship with Miss Davenport has been closer than is conventional, but I assure you, I have never taken advantage of or coerced her. It was all born from sincere feelings." His confession sent a murmur through the room. The dean scowled, tapping his pen sharply on the table. "Sincere feelings? Are you aware that you are destroying a decades-long career and the reputation of this university?" Just then, the conference room door burst open. Isabel strode in, her face pale, but her eyes filled with unwavering resolve. The entire room was stunned. For a student to dare barge into a faculty disciplinary hearing was completely unprecedented. The dean snapped, "What are you doing in here? This is not a place for students." Isabel stood up straight, her voice clear. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I had to speak. If I don't, you will only hear one side of the story. I am here to defend my professor." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but distinct. "It's true that Professor Finch and I have feelings for each other, but he did not take advantage of me. I was the one who sought him out. I was lonely, and he was the only person who truly listened to me. This love is my choice. No one forced me." Her words struck the room like a thunderbolt. The faculty members began to whisper among themselves. The dean slammed his hand on the table. "You're too young to understand what love is. Do you think your words can change the fact that this is a relationship that violates university regulations?" Isabel didn't flinch. Tears streamed down her face, but she remained steadfast. "I may be young, but I know what I want. I would rather face all the criticism than live a life of regret for not daring to hold on to my true feelings. I will not allow anyone to destroy my professor's honor or turn this love into a sin." The room fell silent. Alistair sat there, his hands trembling. He never imagined that this small, quiet young woman could possess such courage. He felt his eyes blur. All the agonizing days, all the fear, it all melted away in that moment as he watched Isabel stand up to protect him. The Chancellor spoke slowly, his voice less harsh than before. "Do you know the consequences of what you've just done? You will face tremendous pressure from your peers, your family, and all of society." Isabel nodded, her eyes blazing. "I know, and I accept it all. As long as Professor Finch doesn't leave me, I will walk with him to the end of the road." After that tense hearing, the story of Isabel and Professor Finch became a legend at the university. At first, the public outcry was fierce, with no shortage of venomous words aimed at her. But contrary to everyone's expectations, Isabel did not break. Every day, she held her head high as she walked past the scrutinizing stares, still attended her lectures diligently, and still sat in the front row as if to prove she had nothing to be ashamed of. Her unwavering resolve, combined with Professor Finch's calm and professional demeanor on the podium, slowly began to change people's minds. The sarcastic remarks lessened, replaced first by curiosity, and then by a grudging sympathy. People began to see their story as a testament to the courage of love, a love that, while unconventional, was not dishonest. Ultimately, the university board made its decision. Professor Finch officially requested early retirement. It wasn't a severe disciplinary action, but it was enough to close the book on his decades-long career. The day he submitted his papers, many sighed with regret. But he just smiled quietly. He knew he had chosen a different path, the path of the heart. At home, Isabel's war with her parents was not over. Richard and Eleanor tried everything to forbid her from seeing him. But the more they forbade it, the more resolute she became. She refused to eat, locked herself in her room, and even left a letter on her desk. "If you keep trying to force me to leave him, I would rather leave this house forever." The letter left them stunned. They realized that if they continued, they might truly lose their only daughter forever. After his retirement, Alistair opened a small tutoring class at his home. He was no longer a university professor, but his beloved students still sought him out. Isabel continued her studies at the university, refusing to let her grades slip. More than anyone, she understood that if she gave up on her future, all of his sacrifices would be for nothing. Every afternoon, she would go to his small house, where they would study, talk, and cook simple meals together. Gradually, their sincerity caused many to change their views. The neighbors no longer whispered, and Isabel's family, after a long period of fierce opposition, finally began to soften. One day, Eleanor saw her daughter laughing, her face radiant and full of joy, and her heart melted. One afternoon, she went to Alistair's house. She didn't say she accepted their relationship, only took her daughter's hand and said quietly, "I don't approve of your choice, but I see that you smile more than you used to. If this is true happiness, then I only hope you are strong enough to see it through to the end." Isabel threw her arms around her mother, tears of joy streaming down her face. She knew that while she didn't have their full approval, her family had, at last, begun to open its heart. Alistair's life had turned a new page. He no longer had a grand lecture hall, but he had a simple, warm home, brightened by the presence of the young woman he loved. He knew he couldn't give her luxury or glamour, but he could give her a steady shoulder to lean on and a faithful heart. And for Isabel, sitting beside him, reading books, and sharing the small stories of their day, that was complete happiness. After everything, they had chosen a quiet life, one without fanfare, without challenging public opinion. They only needed a sincere love to warm their remaining days. And in the end, that is what they found. Thank you all for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Your support means the world to us.